Masechet Yevamot, Daf Mem Bet. We're continuing our discussion of the Mishnah that said that for a woman to get remarried, she must wait 3 months across the board. And so we have a case here. Tenora Banan, Yevama shechalsu la'achim betoch shelosha, tzricha lamtin shelosha chodashim. So Yevama, her husband died without children, and one of the brothers does chalitza, but he doesn't wait the 3 months. He does it within 3 months. And now she wants to get remarried to someone else. She has to wait 3 months. Now, it's not clear what this means. She has to wait this 3 months from when? Is this an additional 3 months after the chalitza? Let's say he does chalitza after a month and a half. So now she has to wait. She waited a month and a half. She has to wait another 3 months, right? So to 4.5 months altogether. Or does it mean from the time of death? That she still has to complete the 3 months from the time of death, even though he did Yibum earlier, right? Don't think that, but just because he did Yibum, even though he and violated and did it before 3 months, that now she can go free. Okay, it's not clear what this part of the Beraita means, but we're going to continue the Beraita and clarify it. If one of the brothers does chalitza and does wait the requisite 3 months, then she does not need to wait at all after that. She can go ahead and get remarried right away. That's the end of the Braita. Haveh hashelosha chodashim shamiru mishat mitat haba'al velo mishat chalisat hayabam. Based on this, we can conclude that the 3 months that we said in the first clause is from the time of the death of the husband and not from the time of the chalisa. How can we tell that? Because in the second half here, it says that if the Yavam waited 3 months and then did Chalisa, you don't have to wait at all. Now, if you had to wait 3 months after Chalisa, just like you have to wait 3 months after a get or after a mitat haba'al. So you might have thought that, just like you need after 3 months after a get, so too you would need it here after Chalitza. Chalitza itself requires a 3 month waiting. But obviously that's not true because in the Sefa, you don't have to wait at all. So therefore in the Resha also, that means that even if he did Chalitza after a month and a half, you just have to wait another month and a half, 3 months altogether. 3 months counts from the time of death. Okay, good. That's all clear. But now we are going to compare it to a get, where we have two opinions. Mai shena miget de Rav amar mishat netina u'Shmuel amar mishat ketiva. We know we have to wait 3 months after someone gets divorced. She has to wait 3 months to get remarried. But when do you count it from? Shemuel says from the time of the writing of the ketubah. It might be some time. Maybe you'll write it one day, and then by the time you get together, it might be some time later before he actually gives it to her. Now, they're not fully divorced. They're not divorced until he gives it to her. But there is a halakha that from the time that it's written, they are not allowed to be together with each other intimately. And if they are together after the get, then the get is no good. And so Shemuel reasons, since they're not allowed to be together from the time of its writing, we know that she's not going to become pregnant from then on. So she only needs to wait 3 months from the time of writing. That's Shemuel's more mekel. However, Rav says it actually has to be given from you have to wait from 3 months from the time of giving. Even though, we know that nothing happened beforehand, and nevertheless, Rav requires that it be officially severed. This marriage has to be officially over. Well, the analogy here is that as long as she did not do halisa, so she still has the sika, she's still not single. And even though she can't be with anybody else, and she was not with any of the brothers, because that would be Yibum, so even though we know she was not with anybody, nevertheless, that zika is not ended until the actual chalitza. So according to Rav, just like you have to wait 3 months from the time of the giving, not from the time that we know she was not with anyone, so too, we should in fact have to wait 3 months after the chalitza. The chalitza itself is what officially severs the relationship. All right, that's the question. And Rava answers it. Amar Rava, kal v'chomer isur karet itarta, isur lav lo kol sheken. Rava says it wouldn't make sense internally with the language of Yibum and Halisa. Yibum, any of the brothers can do Yibum after 3 months from death. Now, and Yibum, if it was prohibited, meaning if she was pregnant, that would be an isur karet. If he did that. And so this is allowed after 3 months, no matter what, and from death. So all the more so, if she actually got halisa, we shouldn't treat her marrying outside. See, if Yevamot marries outside, marries someone else before Yibum or halisa, that is only in the Isur Lav. So what are you going to say? That one of the brothers could have done Yibum after 3 months, but now that you did Chalitza after a month and a half, now she has to wait even longer to marry someone else? But that's a lesser prohibition. So all the more so, we were not going to make her wait. The most we could make her wait would be that 3 months, and that's it. We now go on to the next part of the Mishnah regarding all other women, not Yibum and Chalitza, but anyone else who is divorced or widowed, also have to wait 3 months. V'chen shar kol hanashim. Now, Bishlama Yevamot kedamaran. Ela shar kol hanashim amai. We understand why it's very important for a Yevamot to wait 3 months, because if he would do Yibum with her before and she is pregnant, then that is an Isur Karet, big problem. But anyone else, what's the problem? What if she was divorced and then goes ahead and gets married right away? So, and she turns out to be pregnant. So what? Either the child is from the first marriage and it's a fine kosher child, or it's from the second marriage and a fine kosher child, right? So what do we need to know? It doesn't really matter in terms of, and there's no prohibition that the second husband will have by taking her, even if she is pregnant. It's not prohibited. We're going to see in a minute. There is a different prohibition of marrying a pregnant woman because of the health of the fetus and nursing. But we'll get to that in a minute, right? But right now, right, there's no problem of them actually being together like there is for a Yevamot. Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shemuel Mishum de'amar kera leot lecha lelohim ulzaracha acharecha labchin ben zar'o shel rishon lezar'o shel sheni. Shemuel says because the pasuk says that we have a berit. Right? Hashem makes a Brit Abraham to be a God for you and for your seed after you. In other words, the Berit has to go through the lineage, and you have to know who the lineage is, right? To be Acharecha, you have to know who your kids are. Now, even though it's true, for the sake of Jewishness, we follow the mother. Nevertheless, fatherhood is also an essential part of transmitting the Berit, and you have to know who it is. So we have to know who is the child of the first and who is the child of the second, right? Makes a lot of important differences to know who the father is. Okay, I mean, that's not clear if this is a Deoraita law or a Derabanan law, so it's really not as strong as the reason for Yevamot, but it's something. Okay, Mativ Rava. לפיכך, גר וגיור צריכים להמתין 3 חודשים. הכה מה להבחין איכה? Okay, now we have a question. What if there's a man and a woman who are not Jewish and they're married to each other? Good. And they both convert at the same together. And now, why would they have to wait? The Baraita says, therefore, they have to wait 3 months. What do you mean? What's the therefore they have to wait 3 months? We know who the mother, they have a child, right? So why do you have to know if she's pregnant before or after the conversion? Either way, it's the same father and same mother, right? We know who they are, so there's no chance it's going to be a different father. So what are we checking for? And the answer is, we want to know if this child was conceived after the conversion, then the child was conceived b'kedusha, was actually conceived as Jewish. Otherwise, it's not so. This will make a difference regarding if it's a girl, if she can marry a kohen. If she was conceived afterwards, she is herself a convert. If she was conceived before the conversion, then that means she herself had to go through conversion as a fetus or as an infant, and therefore would not be able to marry a convert. And it also will important regarding no matter if it's a boy, who the father is. If the conversion happened after conception, then the biological father is not the legal halachic father, and therefore would not inherit. So we need to know that for a lot of good reasons. Rava Amar, that's one reason. All that was one line of thinking. We have to know who the father is in order to pass on the berit, as we said from that pasuk. But Rava gives a totally different answer. Rava Amar Gezerah shema yisa et achoto me'aviv ve'yabem eshet achiv me'imo ve'yoseh et imo lashuk v'yiftor et yivimto lashuk. Rava gives 4 different reasons why. Now, it's not talking about the conversion case, but in any case. Why you'd have to know who the father is if she gets remarried after becoming a widow or divorcee. The first one is that one might marry his paternal sister by mistake and not know. For example, you have Sarah. She was married to Yitzchak, divorces, and then marries Yaakov. And she is pregnant in the meantime. We're not sure who the father is, so Mr. Safek here to Uven. Now, he may think that his father is Yaakov. And then he may meet Esther one day, and they'll say, "Oh, isn't that cute? My mother used to be your father's wife." But they are not actually related because Esther is from Yitzchak's other wife, right? They both remarried, and one had a child from Yitzchak had a child from his new marriage. She had a child from his new marriage. So they think they're not related, marry each other. But it could be that Reuven is actually the child of Yitzchak, and therefore they are siblings. So this could lead to big problems, and we would want to know that. Okay, then the second case is v'yabem eshet achiv me'imo. Someone may do yibum when he's not supposed to do yibum. For example, here, Sarah was married to Yitzchak, and then she married Yaakov. Now with Yaakov, Sarah had a child, Moshe. Moshe married Miriam but died without children. And so the Reuven, thinking that he is Yaakov's son, and thinking that they are siblings from their father, he will perform Yibum with Miriam. But it could be that, in fact, he is Yitzchak's son, and maternal brothers do not do Yibum. And if Reuven would then take Miriam, that would be a prohibition of karet. And so that would be another reason to know who it is. Third case, if Sarah had been married to Yitzchak and then divorces, and then she marries Yaakov, and Yaakov dies. Now, we might think that Reuven is in between she has a child, Reuven. We might think that Reuven is the child of Yaakov, and therefore, since Yaakov has a child, so there's no need for Yibum and Chalisa, and Sarah will go and marry Lashuk. But in fact, if Reuven is actually the child of Yitzchak, then Yaakov died without children, and Sarah needs to do Yibum and Chalisa with one of Yaakov's brothers. So that's the third case. The fourth case that could be problematic is if Sarah was married to Yitzchak and they had a child, Aharon. Aharon married Miriam. And then they get divorced, and somewhere in the middle, there's a child, Reuven, born, and she marries Yaakov. It's not clear if Reuven was his father's Yitzchak or Yaakov. Okay, then Aharon dies without children. Now, they may think that Reuven is actually the son of Yaakov, and therefore Aharon has no other brothers, so Miriam can go marry anyone, Lashuk. But in fact, it could be that Reuven is Yitzchak's son, and therefore he would have to perform Yibum and Chalitza, and so she went out to the shuk wrongly. So there you go. That's a list of 4 various cases that Rava says we have to worry about. And so even if it's not Yibum, it's not, even if it's waiting after, not only after Yibum and Chalisad you have to wait, even after a death or divorce, one also has to wait because you have to know who the kids are for all of those 4 reasons. There you go. Mativ Rav Hananya. Now a question to Rava from a Baraita. Bechulan ani kore bahen mishum takanat irva. Vechan mishum takanat valad. Vimita kulehu mishum takanat irva. Rav Hananya quotes a Baraita that says, regarding all the cases, we have to wait 3 months because of irva. All the cases seems to be referring to waiting 3 months for Yibum, because then if a Yavam would do a Yibum within 3 months and she turns out to be pregnant, then that would be Arva Arayot. But here in this case, is where not in the case of Yibum, but rather other cases of after a divorce or widow, it's because to help the child. Now this Baraita sounds like it's talking about the reasoning that Shemuel gave, that we care about the lineage of the child because the Berit is passed down, Shekhinah rests on the child, and knowing who when we know the father. It's important to know the father because the Berit was given to Avraham and to his Zerah after him for the benefit of the child. And if it's according to Rava, all the reasons that he gave were actually had to do with Adayot, right? You might make a mistake regarding Erva, so he should have said according to Rava, the Baraita should have said that all these cases, even these here, are not because of the childhood knowing the father, but rather because of a potential erva. And so we answer, Hai mishum takanat vala de la lifka behu erva. No, what Rava can also explain this baraita. What he means is that we make a takana for the children so that the children do not have a problem with forbidden relations. For example, marrying a sister by mistake. And so therefore, yes, they are all erva, but the yibum is the erva of the parents, and the other cases of after death or divorce are to prevent erva for the children. Next, Bishlama Tamtin Shene Chodashim Vetinase. Now we're going to question, why do you have to wait 3 months? Shouldn't it be sufficient maybe to wait somewhat less? As background to this, we have to understand that according to ancient medicine, and this is not only the rabbis but ancient Greeks as well, Aristotle says this, a pregnancy is viable if it's 9 months, that's a full pregnancy, or 7 months. That is also viable, but not 8 months. 8-month baby cannot survive. Okay, why would they think that? I mean, if anything, 8 months should be better than 7 months, and certainly anything less. You know, nowadays with technology, we can save a 7-month-old fetus, but in olden days, this would have been almost impossible. So why did anyone think that? This probably has to do with the very problems that we're dealing with now, which is that it happened every so often that a boy and a girl who got pregnant out of wedlock, and then they had to hurry up as soon as she started showing at 3 months to say, okay, we better do a wedding quick. And then so they would get married, and before the 3 months before she would start showing, so in other words 2 months later, and then she would have all of a sudden have a baby after 7 months. And so this happened frequently enough that it became a standard understanding that 7-month baby is possible. It was convenient for everyone to believe this. So anyway, however it came to be, this was the common understanding of ancient medicine: 7 months or 9 months, but not anything in between. Okay, let's go with that assumption and see how this works. So we understand why 2 months would be out of the question if you waited only 2 months and got married. Lo. Dehainu sefeka. That's the very question that we have. Ibar tisha lekama. Ibar shiba lebatra. Because if she gives birth 7 months after that marriage, that was 2 months after the first marriage ended, then you don't know, is it 9 months from the first husband or only 7 months from the second husband? So for sure 2 months would not be good. You have to wait 3 months. But what about other possibilities? Ela tamtin chodesh ehad v'tinaseh. How about just wait 1 month? How would that work? If she gives birth 7 months after the second marriage, you know that it's a 7-month pregnancy from the second husband. And if she gives birth 8 months after that second marriage, then you know it's a 9-month baby from the first husband. And so really just after 1 month would be sufficient. We answer, no, that's no good. Iname litmanya yalda ika lememar de batrahu dilma ishtahu ye ishtaha chodesh ehad v'i abad. Now in that case, if she does give birth 8 months after the second marriage, we still don't know, because it could be that she waited a month. She got married after 1 month. She waited to get pregnant 1 month and then had a 7-month-old baby. And that would result in 8 months, just as from the first husband would result in being 8 months after the second marriage. And so that case is ambiguous, and so you can't just wait 1 month. It will result in ambiguous cases. Okay, how about 2.5 months? We save a couple of weeks for her. If she gives birth 7 months after the wedding, then you'll know that it's a 7-month baby from the second husband. If she gets married if she gives birth 6.5 months after the second marriage, then then you know that's 6.5 months plus the 2.5 months from the time that she was separated from her first husband, and then you know it's a 9-month baby from the first husband. Because we know that 7-month baby, even according to ancient medicine, can live, but a 6-month baby cannot. So this would be good. No, we reject this too. Iname leshita. Interesting, using iname as an answer. In each of these cases, iname leshita falga yalda ika lememar de batrahu. No, the truth is that even a 6.5 month old pregnancy is possible from the second husband. Where do we see that? Amar mor zutra, afil man damar yolet isha ena yoledet lemkutain yalda shiv'a yoledet lemkutain. Because everyone agrees that a 7-month pregnancy can be even a partial month, 6.5 months. Even according to the opinion that says 9 months has to be full. There's another opinion that 9 months might be 8.5 months. You can cut it short a little, and that's still considered a 9-month pregnancy. But even if you don't say that regarding 9 months, once it's early, it can be even a little bit earlier. And 7 months is not the 7 months. Can be not. It can be almost 7 months, and so therefore 6.5-month pregnancy is in fact possible. How do we know this from the Pesukim? Here we go. Shene'emar v'hilit kufat hayamim. Regarding Hannah, says that she gave birth kufot hayamim. Now, literally, it just means a season later. It sounds like a year later or something. But mi'ut tikufot shetayim. But tikufot can mean also a season, which is 3 months. And since it's plural, that would be 2 sets of seasons, so 2 sets of 3 months is 6 months. Miut yamim shenayim, and it also says days. Well, the minimum for have a plural is 2, so that would be 6 months and 2 days. So there you go. Shemuel was born to Hannah after 6 months and 2 days, according to this calculation. Again, not the peshat of it, but rather means the next time that they came to Shiloh. Okay. Anyway, so there you go. It could be a partial, less than 7 months. So this option did not work, to wait 2.5 months. Okay. How about v'tamtin mashehu v'tinaseh? How about just wait a couple of days, a short amount of time after the first husband died or was or divorced her, and then get remarried. V'chi malu shelosha chodashim livdeka. And then after three months after that divorce or death, check her to see if she is showing pregnancy. And then we'll know if she's showing then it's from the first husband. If it takes those 2 days, 3 days, however long for her to show, then it's from the second husband. And this would be a good solution. Not have to wait 3 months, just wait a short time, even a few days. Amar Rav Safra en bodkin et hanesuot shelo yitganu ba'alehen. So Rav Safra says theoretically that would work. In fact, medically, that doesn't have a problem with that. But rather that we don't check women who are married, because this procedure, this examination is very intimate, and the husband is going like, oh, you did that procedure, and she's gonna be repugnant to him, and so we don't want to do this. So we don't allow this procedure to be done when they're married. Okay, wait, we have the walking test. Pregnant women walk differently than regular women, so we have her walk, we'll watch her walk, and experts know how to do this. Rami bar Chama, Isha mehapa asma kedesh yirash bena b'nichse ba'ala. And Rami bar Chama says this will not work, because a woman, although yes, her walk is different, she knows how to adjust her walk, even if she's pregnant, to walk like a non-pregnant woman, and she would do that because she wants to act as if she is not pregnant, because even if she knows she's pregnant, because she wants this child to be known as the child of the second husband, so that eventually when that second husband will die, this child will inherit from her second husband. The first husband, maybe he died already, out of the picture, maybe he has no inheritance, and so therefore she's going to make believe she's not pregnant, and we cannot trust this test. And therefore we exhausted all the other possibilities, and that is why we have to wait 3 months. Until now, we've been assuming that the reason why we wait 3 months is because we want to distinguish between the first and second husband, so we know who the father of the possible child is. But what if we know that she is pregnant? Then can the second husband marry her? So we say, Yeah, once we establish that she is in fact pregnant from the previous husband, right? She's showing already. Then she can go ahead and get married to the second one because we know who the father is. Now, this is really interesting because it means that she will be pregnant and give birth to a child while married to a man who is not the father of the child, and there is no problem with that. We're going to introduce a problem in a second, but there's no fundamental problem of erva. This is important because this would be a support for permitting IVF with a sperm donor. If a husband has a low sperm count, cannot have a child, and then the woman wants to go and get a sperm donor, and so there were some that thought and wrote that perhaps this is like adultery because she's becoming pregnant with another man's sperm and who's not her husband. But you see from here that in this case she is definitely pregnant from a first husband, and she will continue to be pregnant and give birth to another man's child while she's married to a second one, and there's no problem here of edva. So this is a good proof that that is permitted. Okay, but there is a different problem. Alamatenya lo yisa adam me'oberet havero meneket havero v'im nasa yosi velo yachzir olamid. We have another braita that says a person should not marry a woman who is pregnant from another man, or someone who is nursing a woman who's nursing an infant who she had with another man. And if they do get married, they should separate, divorce, and cannot remarry ever. So this is a very serious thing. What is the reason? It's not because of adva, but rather for a different reason. That's why it's not contradictory to this. Beforehand, we were just talking about establishing who the father is for yibum purposes. That could lead to edva. Rava said other cases like could lead to edva, other reasons. But here, what is the reason for this gezerah? Not to marry any woman who is pregnant or nursing? And the answer is gezerah shemata seubara sandal, because we are worried that now the second husband will have relations with her, and they seem to have thought that a woman who is pregnant can get more pregnant. She can get pregnant with a second child. Perhaps they saw that women have twins or triplets, and they thought that's because they have relations multiple times while she's pregnant, and that leads to a second pregnancy within the womb. And although that's not exactly biologically true, nevertheless, the problem is that we are afraid she will become pregnant with the second fetus, and then there won't be room inside her womb, and the first will be crushed and will be deformed and will turn into a shape of a sandal, or maybe a sandal fish, and will not be a healthy pregnancy for the first fetus. Okay, so that's why we have to wait at first for sure until after she gives birth. That will be 9 months. Still doesn't explain the 24 months just yet of meneket. Okay, so wait a second. This doesn't make sense because what if it's his own child, right? What if someone is a man and a woman just married once, and she becomes pregnant from her husband, and now she's pregnant, and can they have relations during pregnancy? Well, why don't you? They're of course allowed. So why don't you say the same thing? That maybe you shouldn't be allowed because maybe it'll cause a second pregnancy while she's pregnant and cause a problem there. So ileman damar bemoch bemoch. Regarding the husband's own child, well, we already solved that. Either we permit her to use a moch type of a cloth or sponge that will absorb the seed, a kind of contraception, or we say we leave it in heaven's hands. They're allowed. They're doing something permitted, so they're allowed to have relations, and we hope that heaven will have mercy on her and on the fetus. And so that's why we allow a husband to have relations, even though his wife is pregnant with his child. Wait a second. So if that's true, hachanameh. It should be the same true, even if he is not the father of the child, that we should allow them to marry and have relations, and either they'll use the sponge or we will rely on heaven to have mercy on the fetus from the first husband. So that can't be the reason. Ella mishum de hasa. Rather, it's maybe because of pressure. During relations, he will put pressure on her stomach, and that may cause a miscarriage. So we say, and we ask about that. Well, then that would be true of if he was the father of the child. What's the difference if he's not if he's the second husband or the first husband? So then we should never allow someone to have relations with their own husband during pregnancy. So we say, no, it's different. If he is the father of the child, then he will have mercy on her, on it, and will not apply too much pressure to her stomach. Or we say, here too, the second husband will have mercy on the child, even if it's not his child. He doesn't want to cause it harm, so he'll press down only lightly for the sake of the child. So that can't be the reason why you can't get married to a pregnant woman. Rather, the reason is because typically a woman who's pregnant is also going to be nursing. They didn't have formulas, so then, right, the life of the newborn is going to be dependent on her ability to nurse. However, if she should become pregnant, usually women don't get pregnant while they're nursing. They don't ovulate the same, but it is definitely possible for them to. And so we worry if she would become pregnant, then the milk will dry up and the child will die because of that. And that's why we don't allow a second husband to marry a pregnant woman. But then we say, then that should be true for a husband if it is his own child as well. We should not allow a husband to have relations with his own wife while she's pregnant and even while she's nursing. So that we have an answer to. No, for his own child, we don't worry because she will feed him eggs and milk. They'll smash up eggs and milk and make a kind of homemade milk formula and keep the infant alive. So that's okay. Even if the milk dries up, they can keep it alive. So then we say, okay, then that's even if it's not his child, that father also can use this remedy, and the mother can also feed him eggs and milk that are crushed up. So we don't have to worry that the nursing will stop. Here's what we were worried about. The second husband will not want to pay the expense of making this home remedy formula with eggs and I guess some animal milk, and he doesn't want to pay. He is obligated to pay for her expenses, right? Every husband in a kituv has to pay for food, shelter, and clothing for his wife, but he does not have to pay for his stepson's expenses, and he's not going to want to pay for it. And therefore, where is she going to get the money from? Okay, so velit ba'ine layorshim. Why doesn't she go to the husband's inheritance and say, listen, the first husband, say this child is a child of the first husband, and therefore the inheritance should go and pay for the food that is required. Most women are embarrassed to come to court and fight for it, and she's not going to end up fighting for it. The husband's not going to want to pay for it. She won't be able to pay for these eggs and milk, and then we are worried that this infant will die. And this is not true for if it's a father. If the father is married, if the father of the child is married to the woman, then we don't worry, even if she probably won't get pregnant while she's nursing. Even if she does get pregnant while she's nursing and the milk dries up, that doesn't matter. The father will pay for the eggs and the milk if he's the father. But if he's not the father and it was from a different husband, then he won't want to pay. And so this is the reason why we do not allow a pregnant woman to get remarried when knowing that she's pregnant. So it's just a practical problem like that. It's not any problem of ervad, the fact that she's pregnant from another man's child. All right, good. The next section of the Mishnah says, Achat betolot v'achat be'olot. This was Tanakama, that says all types of women have to wait, in all cases, 3 months between marriages. Okay, henihu betulot v'henihu arusot, henihu be'olot v'henihu nesuot. We ask, and the Mishnah gave a whole list, but the list seems repetitive, right? Which are bitulot and which are arusot? Isn't that the same thing, right? Generally, someone who's arusa, a woman who's arusa, the first time for a first marriage is also a bitula. So why do you have to say both of these? And if someone is a nisu'ah, someone is married, we can assume, unless, rare case, they didn't yet consummate their marriage, but we can assume that they are be'ulot. So why do we have to, are these, what's the difference between these? And we answer, in fact, you're right, there is no difference between them. We're just covering all the bases, all the possibilities. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Hachika Amar, here's how to read the Mishnah, Achat betulot ve'achat be'ulot shenit armelu, or shenit gadishu, whether they have never had relations before or they did, and whether they were widowed or divorced, all have to wait 3 months, and it doesn't matter whether all these women, any of these women, however they, whatever their status is and however they separated from their husbands, whether they were ben min arusin ben amisuin, whether they were only engaged to their first husband or they were actually married to the first husband, makes no difference. In all cases, you have to wait 3 months. And you're right, there is overlap between the categories. Rabbi Elazar lo al lebet midrasha. One day, Rabbi Elazar did not come to the bet midrash. He wasn't feeling good, whatever reason. Ashkechel Rabbi Aseh. So he got notes from a friend. He found Rabbi Aseh. Amale mai amora banan bebe midrasha. What did the rabbis teach in the bet midrash today? Amale hachi amar Rabbi Yochanan halakha ke Rabbi Yoseh. And they said they taught in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that the law follows Rabbi Yoseh. He was the one that said, he was the last opinion that said that if she was only engaged, only had edusin to the first husband, so then there was no bi'ah, there's no problem, so there's no chance that she is pregnant. Therefore, she can get remarried immediately, unless she was widowed from him. In that case, she has to wait 3 months because it's a widow and she's in mourning. But otherwise, right, if you know she's not pregnant because she was only kiddushin with the first husband, she can get married right away. All right, that's what Rabbi Yochanan said. Now, we ask, how could Rabbi Yochanan follow Rabbi Yoseh against Tanakama? There was also opinion of Rabbi Yehuda there. Remember, right? Tanakama, Rabbi Yehuda, then there was Rabbi Yoseh. So there was also Tanakama, and Tanakama usually, we think, is the opinion of the majority. So how could Rabbi Yochanan say halakha is like Rabbi Yoseh? Should we conclude from that the Tanakh Kama was actually a minority, an individual opinion, and that's why he disagreed with it? And we say, yes, in fact, that is so. In V'hatanya, because we have a Braita that teaches exactly this. This Braita is also found as a parallel in the Tosefta. In the following various cases where there's no chance that the woman is pregnant. For example, she often ran away to her father's house. She didn't like it with her husband for whatever reason, and she would spend a lot of time in their father's house, and he lived, let's say, in a different city. So she was not with her husband when he died. Or there was a fight in the house, and she was not sleeping with her husband. Or maybe he was in jail, and they didn't have conjugal rights in jail. Or if the husband was old or sick and was not able to have relations with her. Or maybe she was sick. Or soon after the husband died, she had a miscarriage. So now we know for sure that she's not now pregnant. Or maybe she had already been barren. Or she became old and no longer could have child. Or ketana, or she was a minor and couldn't have a child. Or ailonit, or she never developed sexually and so could not have a child. Or she's just cannot give birth for whatever reason, cannot get pregnant for whatever reason. Nevertheless, has to wait 3 months. Look at this, right? This Braita is expanding greatly on our Mishnah, and is the same as the Tanakama opinion in our Mishnah, and yet it says these are the words of Rabbi Meir. So here we see that the Tanakama in our Mishnah is not the majority opinion, but rather Rabbi Meir. You see what happens is Rabbi Yehuda Nasi probably actually had this Baraita or something very much like it that had all the names, and he may have taken out the name of Rabbi Meir and made it stam so that halakha would be like him. That was Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. but Rabbi Yochanan does not have to agree with that. Rabbi Yochanan says, I know who it is, right? It's not anonymous to me. I know it's to be Meir, and I don't have to follow to be Meir. So he could follow to be Yosef. And the Braita continues, Rabbi Yehuda matir le'ares v'linaseh miyad. Rabbi Yehuda says one can do edusin or get married immediately in any of these cases because it's apparent that there was no way she was pregnant. Right? There's the same Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah who says if she was only edusin, she could do nisuin. If she had been nesua, she can do edusin. So Rabbi Yehuda just says, we don't apply the rule that Rabbi Meir does. Rabbi Meir says we don't make any distinctions, right? Even though, for sure she's not pregnant, we just make a rule across the board. It's much easier that way. Otherwise, too complicated. Rabbi Yehuda says no. We look into each case. There's no possibility she's pregnant. There's no need to wait 3 months. And so now it makes sense that Rabbi Yochanan said Hapasak Halakha, not like either of these two, but like Rabbi Yosef in the Mishnah. Who said it's okay to get married after Edusin, except for a widow. But now we have a later tradition of Rabbi Chia, who says Rabbi Yochanan changed his mind, and he no longer thinks that Halakha is like Rabbi Yosef. Okay. He could change his mind. Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef is trying to figure out why did he change his mind. If he changed his mind, it must be because of a braita that derives from the vineyard. The vineyard meaning Kerem beyavne. In the city of Yavne, there was a Kerem. What does it mean, Kerem? Either it was an actual vineyard and that they studied in the vineyard. Most people don't say this, but it actually could be. We know that the Greek philosophical schools sometimes would meet outdoors, and rabbis also. We have cases of them meeting in outdoor areas, like the Stoics studied under the stoa, under the columns of buildings, and so it could be that there was actually a vineyard. However, the most people explain that the vineyard refers to the rows of benches that were like in the shape of a vineyard. Okay. Anyway, the point is that the baraita that comes from Yavne would be an authoritative one, an important one. And here's what it says: the Tanya, Amar Rabbi Yishmael ben Osher Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, Shamati mipi chachamim bekerem b'Yavne kulan serichot lamtin shelosha chodashim. So here we go. We have a tradition from the sages in Kerem b'Yavne. So these are the early sages right after the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, who said all women have to wait 3 months between marriages, no matter what. Doesn't matter what the case is. Doesn't matter if she was barren. Doesn't matter if she was old or he was old. All cases. So there you go. Rabbi Yochanan must have heard this braita and changed his mind and said, you know what? Even though I know it's Rabbi Meir, who is a minority opinion, nevertheless, there's a braita that follows him, that supports him. So halakha is now like Rabbi Meir and like the Tanakama in our Mishnah. Good. Amar le Rabbi Yirmiyah le Rabbi Zerika. Ki ayalt lekamed Rabbi Abhu Ramile. Rabbi Yirmiyah finds his friend Rabbi Zerika and says, listen, when you go and study with Rabbi Abahu, please raise to him the following question. Mi amar Rabbi Yochanan halakha ki Rabbi Yosef. Is it possible that Rabbi Yochanan ever said originally that halakha is like Rabbi Yosef? I know we just said he changed his mind. But how could he even have thought it originally? Rabbi Yochanan halakha kisam mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan has a general rule that whenever we have an anonymous mishnah, the halakha follows that. So even though, you might have another braita and you know that it's the opinion of Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi made it anonymous, and therefore we should follow that opinion. Utenan. כל הנשים לא ינסו, לא יתעשו, עד שיהיו להם 3 חודשים, 1 בתולות ו1 בעולות. And our Mishnah, that we've been focusing on this whole time, here in Yevamot, says all women may not marry or do erusin until they wait 3 months, and doesn't matter if they are betulot or be'ulot. So therefore, from the get-go, Rabbi Yochanan should have said halakha is like Stam Mishnah. Why would he ever say that halakha is like Rabbi Yosef? Okay, so Rabbi Zerika does in fact what he was asked, and he goes and asks Rabbi Abhu this question. Amar le, dirama lacha lachash lekimche. Okay, we have a witty line Rabbi Abu says, whoever sent you this question, whoever asked you to raise this question to me, is not careful with his flour. Meaning he's not discerning to have very fine flour. He puts everything in the mill. Everything is grist for the mill, and it doesn't distinguish between one thing and another. This is not a carefully thought out question. Why? Because here's the real rule. Stam ve'achar kach machloketi ve'en halakha kistam. In this case of the Mishnah, you're right. You do have an anonymous opinion, but after that you have a machloket. So when we say stam halakha is like stam Mishnah, that's when it's just a stam Mishnah by itself. But here we have a stam, and then we have two other opinions afterwards. So we do not apply the rule that halakha kistam Mishnah when there's stam and then a machloket. How do we know that? Damar of Papavi Temar Rabbi Yochanan. Some said of Papa said, some said Rabbi Yochanan himself said it. Machloket v'achar kach setam halakha kistam. When you have a machloket and then it concludes with a stam, with an anonymous opinion, then halakha kistam. Or if there's only no machloket, just stam. Yes, so if you're ending off with stam, then that indicates this should be the halakha. However, stam v'achar kach machloket and halakha kistam. But if it starts off with an anonymous opinion, then it could be that the later opinions are actually commenting on the stam, disagreeing, whatever. But that's not the stam is not the last word. The last word is machloket. So in that case, we do not follow you do not have to follow the halakha according to the stam Mishnah. And therefore, you asked a bad question, because our Mishnah is in fact stam and then a machloket. So the Rabbi Yochanan, even according to his own rule, does not have to follow the stam. He could very well follow the Yoseh, and that is what he said to begin with. Afterwards, when he heard a braita from Kerem B'Yavneh, then he once again changed his mind. And we're going to get more into the rules about halakha kistam, in what cases it is, what cases it isn't, which is really fascinating and essential for understanding the development of halakha. But we'll get to that on the next stuff. Baruch Adonai L'olam, amen v'amen.